Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am one of your hosts, James, and because the Fantastic Four movie is going to be coming to the screens later this year, we thought we would talk about one of the pivotal Marvel events in the history of Marvel Comics. That was done in 3 issues, which for today would be an entire 6-issue miniseries with 50 tie-ins.
Exactly.
And that is the legendary Coming of Galactus, Fantastic Four issues 48, 49, and 50. And to do that, I of course have Joe with me.
Thank you, James. How you doing, folks?
And of course, we could not do this without. He's not just our X-Men expert; he is also our Marvel
Marvel
Cosmic, Marvel Intergalactic expert. Arco Esposito is back with us as well.
Thank you
All
very much.
right.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Thank you, guys.
So, unlike my other thing of not reading Amazing Spider-Man, was it 39 and 40,
39
or
and 40.
reading Giant Size X-Men #1? I actually read this previously before this
Ooh,
podcast.
cool.
I probably read it the first time after 4 years ago when we first started this podcast. We did our top 10 favorite comic book storylines of all time. I don't know where this rated it for you there, but it was on that
It was in the
list.
top 10, yes, of course.
It was
Probably the top 5.
Yeah, so I think I read it for right after that because obviously this is like the pinnacle Marvel story, and I would say, you guys are the Marvel experts, but it seems like this is like
He's the
the
Marvel expert.
well,
No, I appreciate
um,
that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
this Stan and Jack. I mean, I say in jest, but it's probably true. If this was done today, it probably would be a 6-issue series, and it would have all the tie-ins. And Stan and Jack did this series. It did this whole thing in 3 issues, but at the same time wrapped up the Inhumans saga and sent
hmm
Johnny Storm to college. So they had
Yeah, exactly. Just
That's
another
pretty
day's
funny.
work.
they
Yeah.
had time to spare. So I think we'll just kind of dive into it. I mean, actually, before that, let's just do like we always do. So Joe, being the I don't know the statesman, the elder statesman
Okay.
of this podcast, when did
Okay.
you
Well,
first read these issues, or these? What part of it did you read,
I've
or
been racking my brains all day. I didn't read these when they came out because they came out, let's see, 48 came out, cover date December 60, March 66, but December 65, and the other two, January and February.
Right.
I always started reading comics in May of 66, and it was mostly DC. I would assume I picked these up at a convention in the early 70s. But I had known about these stories because I had been reading Marvel at that point for about 5 or 6 years, and
hmm
just through letter pages or little footnotes. You always knew about Galactus, but he hadn't come back yet, at least until, well, he might have been back by then. I'm not exactly sure when he came back again, but it was part of the Marvel consciousness. If you were a Marvel comic book fan, that you knew about these stories, you couldn't avoid them. And I finally got them, and I have them here. I'm going to pick them up and show them to you. There's number,
It's great.
there's number 48.
Oh my
wow?
God! And look at the colors. How bright they still are after
Yeah, this is like a fine minus this comic book.
60 almost 60 years. That's
Yeah,
crazy. Huh?
probably pay 50 cents for it.
Yeah.
Uh, here's number 49. This is one of my favorite covers of all
Yeah.
time.
That's great. That's great. hmm
And then the book that has everything in it. I mean, you name it, everything's in number 50. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
it's just amazing what they
Wow.
did.
It's
So yeah, these
crazy.
these I picked up at probably a New York Comic Con or a Creation Con in the early 70s.
hmm
And when I read them, I was blown away. I knew why people were talking about them so much. So yeah, that's probably around 71, 72. I first came upon these books.
Wow, that's fantastic. And Argo, when did you first like read the series or come to it?
Um, I, I read the series in the 90s at some point, some sort of reprint, I'm sure, way before I was able to find it online. So I definitely read it in some sort of reprint form. However, I knew of it. I knew of the entire storyline about 10 years earlier when I got into it. And uh, I, I didn't know when I first got into comic books, it was in 1984 with Secret Wars, and Galactus was part of that entire storyline. Didn't know who he was at the time. So within a couple of years, I realized what Galactus was and what he meant to the entire Marvel universe and how important he really was. So from humble beginnings for me, and just a few issues of Marvel superheroes to a few years later, the Trial Galactus was able to read James, that great trade paperback you remember, and
Mm.
how big of a character he became in the Marvel universe. So it was amazing to me because I've always had a very a soft spot in my heart for Galactus all these years.
Yeah, I would say like a Galactus. You Argo, got me into Thanos,
No,
and you got me into Galactus. I would
there you
say
go. There you
those are
go.
the two.
Absolutely.
I would, in my mind, those are the two ultimate Marvel cosmic villains.
They are. And we'll talk about that because he's not a villain in the
Well, you know
true.
what I
No,
mean.
he's not.
Like,
No, he's a force of nature.
He is a force of nature, and what's funny is that when we talk about this, we'll talk about what Stan and Jack really set out to do, and to not make it so much as a black and white Doctor Doom type despot, okay, out there to take over the world. He's doing it because he has to.
Yeah.
And not that it makes it any better for the worlds that he consumes, but
No.
that's what's great about it. Yeah.
I just
No.
checked. The second coming of Galactus was issue number 77, 2 years later in 1968.
Yeah,
So
okay. Yeah, cool.
I have those issues too.
Nice.
And I would have been reading those in real time. So yeah,
Yeah.
and then I came to these a few years later at a convention.
And Joe, it's
It's great.
amazing. You're right, like there for all that history. Like you were
Yeah,
like.
I know. That's great. That's great. Yeah.
All right, so we should dive into it. So Joe had this. We started this model with one of our episodes, our first Crisis episode that will have hopefully come out by the time this episode is, of like summarizing the issue and then going into it. So I thought since there's three of us, we could each summarize one of them and then just kind of talk about it a little bit, and then at the end we can give like overall thoughts or however. But instead of jumping in cold, so Fantastic Four number 48 gives us the wrap up of the Inhuman saga, which I still haven't read the Inhuman saga, so rereading this again, I know who all these characters are, but don't know the history. Johnny gets separated from Crystal, and they head home to the Baxter Building, and the sky is on fire, and they don't know why, and people are blaming. The Human Torch is going out there to try to figure it out, and then they think he caused the fire.
Yeah.
And then it's eventually that the Watcher shows up and warns of the coming of Galactus, and that he's trying to protect this world because he values the people of this world, which I'm assuming the Watcher has shown up previously based upon his conversation.
Yes.
Because I have not read that either. So,
I mean, just to comment real fast on that. I'm sorry, I don't know if you want to summarize, then talk about it.
No, we can go through it. Yeah.
I mean, I always found it funny that Watu, the Watcher, always states that he is forbidden to interfere, yet he is right in the middle of everything. I mean, from the day that we first see him, and I forgot the exact issue, but we're talking like in the teens of Fantastic Four when he first showed up.
Number 13, Arco?
Yeah, something along those. I was going to say 16, but something along those lines. He has always, I mean, been in the middle of it. I mean, I can't do it for you, but I can show you how to do it. That's basically what he does in this issue and every issue always. So
he's Captain Kirk breaking the Prime Directive every episode.
I mean, he should be kicked out a dozen times over.
As a Watcher Society.
Right, exactly. So, but go ahead, James. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And then eventually, the Silver Surfer appears. He is not put off by the ruse of the Watcher. He gets on top of the Baxter Building and signals for his master to come. And I love this part, that Ben Grimm just knocks him over with one punch and he falls down. Basically, sucker punches him from behind, I think, while he's doing this. And he falls down, and we eventually find out where he falls later. And then by the end of the comic, we see the arrival of Galactus, his first appearance with the big G on his chest, no pants.
And what else? Tell me what else? His first appearance.
Hold on.
Oh,
what does he look like?
Oh, Galactus?
Yes. All right. Okay. Now, well, what's his color palette?
Oh, he's not even purple yet. He's like what?
He's red and green.
Red and green.
And brown. And brown also.
Yes.
Brown,
yes. And they only had it for that one panel, never to be used again, only for whatever reason. And I did read the reason recently, looking up, knowing that we were doing this podcast. They did it, and they used that color scheme. And right after they did it, they're like, "This is terrible." And they went to the color scheme that we now know, basically a magenta purplish. Yes, that's and the reprints afterwards, they have him in purple. But originally, and if he goes into his original issue from issue 48, that last panel is going to be a green, a Christmas tree Galactus. That's what it's going to
I
be.
like that
Well,
because
they did preserve it because I read this digitally off of Hoopla on the
They did,
Masterworks
yeah, yeah,
Masterworks Volume 3 or 4, or
yeah, this
whatever,
is
I
an
think.
epic
yeah.
collection. Volume
Yeah,
3.
and they preserved the original panel, so I got to
Yes,
see that
yes,
weird color.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I guess you
Look
can
at that.
retcon that because what the power cosmic can do anything. Maybe Galactus.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, they gave him pants after that also.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
the fact that he had
it's
shorts
cold
on
in it's
was,
cold in space, man.
oh man, whatever. That's fine.
Galactus was like showing up. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, he's sort of going along with that motif. The Watcher is like dressed like a Roman sort of sage or something
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the
Okay.
robe
Yeah.
and everything.
Hmm.
Okay.
Very. I mean, I know that. I guess I always envision because that's when I first met him. The Watcher as the more big-headed, slender framed figure with a long collar.
So he started out,
Yes.
yes.
The
Yes.
way
Yes.
Kirby draws him here, he's sort of like I don't know, a sort of an oafing bald guy
Yes.
a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
So
Absolutely. Hmm.
it's in my head, it's a little different the way I picture the Watcher, but obviously it's the same character doing the same thing.
Same character. It's just, I mean, he's evolved over the years, and his neck has gotten smaller, and his eyes gotten bigger, and all that. But
Yeah.
yes, that's the same Watcher. Hmm.
So yeah, so I guess we can, that's the summary basically. I think if I missed any major points, you can let me know. But we can, I guess, dive into it again. I've not read the whole Inhuman saga, so I guess that's it's interesting how they put the very tail end of what seemed like a long, I guess, a few issues into this massive story arc they're about to kick
And
off.
and Stan Lee and Kirby, but Stan Lee, obviously the main writer at the time, did that in many series. I mean, so he would, rather than today, you would have a one-page blurb recap of everything that's gone on to lead into whatever it is that you're reading now. But back then, they would actually put it on paper in art form,
Hmm.
and basically telling you, okay, well, this is what's happened with the Inhumans, and you get 1 or 2 pages, if I remember correctly. They're 1 or 2 pages, and now there's a force field in the Himalayas where Atalon is their home. It's being it's separates them from the rest of Earth, and he's banging on it, trying to get in, if I remember correctly.
Hmm.
And then they're like, all right, well, we can't do anything here, so let's go home. And that's
Yeah,
basically
that's what
what
they
happened.
basically did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's basically what happened. It was just crazy. So yeah.
they called it the negative zone, which would come back a
Yes,
couple of
yes.
years later. As something completely different, obviously.
Well, it's funny because they had the negative zone, if I'm not mistaken, with Annihilus in issues way before then. There's Penny, say hello.
We'll have to check that. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they already had a negative zone. So I'm curious as to why they would double up on that. But I may be mistaken, and Annihilus maybe came in the 50s and 60s rather than the earlier
I think he
issues.
did. But you know what? That's classic Stan Lee because if you go back and look at the early stuff,
Hmm.
Robert Bruce Banner,
Right,
Bob
right.
Banner.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, he was getting confused. That's why all the names are alliterative. Reed Richards, Peter
yes,
Parker, Bruce Banner, because he
yes.
couldn't remember them.
That's exactly, and I saw that interview recently on a YouTube short of why he used those types of names, because he goes, there are too many names, there are too many characters. I needed an easy way to remember them. Yeah.
Gee, he could have Flo Steinberg write them down. I mean, she was his
Yeah,
secretary. I don't know.
yeah, mm,
Who knows?
yeah. So, um, but I
He's a
mean,
cheat sheet.
talking about that first issue, what I thought was really amazing, the build up to what we were going to witness. We knew that this was, going to be like it was supposed to be their biggest test, their biggest foe up until this time. And for the entire issue, when between the fake space rocks
Hmm.
covering the atmosphere, the fire, and then you have the Silver Surfer showing up, and Watu literally losing his mind over the fact that Galactus is coming, Galactus is coming. You're like, oh my God, what is this? You had that sense of dread and impending doom that they were able to positively portray on the pages to us, the readers, that you definitely felt was palpable. You kind of lost it with the Christmas tree motif in the shorts when at the first panel,
Yeah.
and the very last panel, but up until that point, it did everything. They did everything correctly to make it feel like something big was about to happen.
Well, they even
Yeah.
went so far as like connecting this cosmic universe. As they had the scrolls in there, trying to
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's flee.
Yeah.
Let's hope
let's get
Galactus
the
sends
hell
us.
out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
Yeah, the
gonna pass
surfer is
by.
coming. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. And and you want to connect the circles 30 years later. What happens to the Skrull homeworld in the Trial of Galactus trade paperback, James, that you read? He ended up taking that world and
Hmm.
destroying it and scattering the Skrulls to the winds, as it were. It's funny that the Skrulls were the first aliens that were seen in the Marvel universe in the
Hmm.
Fantastic Four issue number 2, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, issue
Hmm.
number two.
and
Yeah.
they have been a big, huge part ever since then, and even in the Coming of Galactus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, we're not, it's been a while since I read these, probably about 2 or 3 years. Obviously, Stan is just at the height of his powers here, and obviously Jack is doing what he's doing. But we've spoken, often about Stan and Jack, and you can't belittle any of their accomplishments. But I'd like to talk about the inker here a little bit, which is Joe
Okay.
Sinnott.
Hmm.
Joe Sinnott started inking this book, issue 44, and that's, I think, from issue 44 to about issue 80 or so. That's the meat and potatoes. That's the best run of Fantastic Four, and it looks the best too because Sinnott
Hmm.
unlike Vince Colletta, who erased Kirby's artwork, especially in Thor,
Hmm.
Sinnott didn't do that. Everything that Kirby put on the page, Sinnott inked and just made it shine. Literally made it shine, and that helps to convey the story. Stan's writing, Lee's incredibly cinematic artwork, but then all polished, beautifully polished by the inker. So I just want to give props to
Oh,
Joe
and
Sinnott.
I was going to mention how great the art looked, because although I've never been as huge a Kirby fan, I respect what he did and everything. As far as art goes, I've never been a huge Kirby fan, but like you said, the art in general really took off in this run.
Hmm.
You named it 44 to, and let's say the 80s. We've spoken about this in the past, guys, where uh, the run of the Fantastic Four from the early 40s through and I said like the 60s at the time. Just look at the stories that we had. We had the Inhumans into Galactus, into the Black Panther, into Doctor Doom stealing the secret Silver
Oh,
Surfer's powers. You
Cosmic,
had yeah, you had the creation of him, or who became Adam Warlock,
the Negative
all
Zone, the
within,
Nihilus.
yeah, Annihilus, exactly, all within a span of 24 to 30
Incredible.
issues. So, I mean, you talk about the height of their powers, both
Yeah,
in writing and creating and artwork. You're not going to get a better run in any series, as far as I'm concerned. And
I completely agree.
I'm an X-Men person, but you want to pick a series where everything happened that is still happening today. It's still relevant today. I would say that run of the Fantastic Four.
It's the foundation of the entire
I,
Marvel
I,
universe.
I
They weren't
agree.
world building; they were universe building.
And that's it. And they literally brought the universe to the pages with Galactus.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would also say like I don't know if he was like channeling Ditko, but some of those Silver Surfer panels when he's in space, like the colors and the way he drew, like
Yeah.
Kirby was
Oh,
drawing that
Oh, yeah,
background.
but
I'm
you're
like,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
was like,
Okay.
this looks very Doctor Strange. Like
Yeah.
those
Okay.
that's what I was when I was reading. I was like, wow, look at those colors, look at
Yeah.
the space that
Hmm.
Kirby and who's the colorist on this? Whatever they did a great job because they
Are they list the colors
really
back
made
in the
colors
day?
that popped in those space
Hmm.
scenes.
They weren't
Where
listing colors. It was just Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Adi Simak as his letterer, but they weren't listing colorists
All
at
right.
that
Well,
time. Yeah.
whoever they were, they did a great job
Did a
and
great
really
job.
because I was like, wow, these are. I thought those like tiny panels, because when I'm
Hmm.
reading digitally, they make the panel like the whole screen. I was like, this
Right.
is
Right.
beautiful.
Right. Yeah.
Every
It's,
panel
It
is
might have been
beautiful.
Jack. A lot of these guys were doing double duty. Jack
Yeah. Well,
Kirby might have been coloring these books at the time.
yeah, I'm
So
very similar to you, Arco. Like I respect what Jack Kirby did, but he's not always my favorite artist. But this
hmm
this book, I think he was on point with
It
like
was on point. I agree.
he was.
The height of their powers, and listen, Kirby was gone within 4 years from Marvel at this
mhm.
point, and and then took all of his powers to DC and created
Fourth one.
He did similar universe building with the New Gods. So
Well, he gave us Darkseid. This the
yeah,
band gave
gave
us
us
Yeah.
Galactus and also gave us Darkseid. So,
absolutely. So
so
hmm
Darkseid
um,
is a villain. Doctor,
Dark,
Yeah,
dark,
no,
dark.
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
he's
Yeah,
there's nothing good. There's nothing good about him.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Should we move on to issue 49?
Yeah, sure. So, issue 49, I read that today. As a matter of fact, I wanted to be as fresh with that as possible. I loved that they, he comes, Galactus comes and basically swats them away like gnats, and what do they end up doing? They're like, all right, well, we can't do anything right now, but let's think about this while we're taking a shave and a shower and a
Yeah.
bath, and let's go on. And Reed's like, well, it doesn't hurt to clean ourselves up while we're thinking about the end of the world and what we're going to do about it. So,
He's very practical.
yeah,
If I'm
he
going to meet
is.
my maker, I want to go clean shaven.
Pretty much, he did, and I also love. There's one particular panel in this, and unfortunately, I don't have it available to show you, but
Okay, let me see.
um, I
Think
loved
it's
the way that they showed the spaceship he was coming down with, and it was actually like a picture. It was very pop artish,
Oh yeah, yeah. It was
1966,
oh,
like a
like a black and white
it was like a
picture
mixed
of
media type of thing. Yeah.
yes,
the
yes,
same.
and yes, and
It's a collage. This is what Kirby was doing back then.
yeah, and
Collages. Yeah.
I had forgotten that, and I'm like,
Very 60s. Collages were very 60s.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is so trippy. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it was
it's,
definitely
he's,
1960s. Andy Warholish is what how I would say it.
when
So,
I was in
uh,
high school, we were in
yeah,
the early 70s. We were making collages. It was something we
yeah.
were doing. Yeah.
So that
Still
was
doing.
crazy, and then we have a bunch of different things going on in issue 49. You see what happened. They're like, hey, what happened to the Silver Surfer? And Ben Grimm, of all people, knocked him into not only the next block, but he knocked him
Across
onto
town.
across town onto the roof of one Alicia Masters, who at the time was Ben Grimm's girlfriend. Okay,
Now
and
wife.
Now
I'm
what?
sorry,
Yes.
now wife,
Now
exactly.
they're married now.
Uh,
Yes. Finally.
although
Only took
although let's
50 years.
don't forget she also married Johnny Storm in the 80s.
Oh,
Oh, that's right.
oh,
Yeah.
that turned out to
Right.
be Elijah
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Scroll.
The
Yes, yes.
scroll. Yes, exactly. But
That was a
another
good twist.
another twist. It's all right. But I love that she being blind and everything can, can always see the best in somebody. Without by just touching their faces, you could see the loneliness. And as we know from Norrin Rad, he was a lonely figure because you have to be cold and calculating and lonely to serve Galactus and
Hmm.
bring dozens and dozens of worlds to an end to do that. So she felt that that he had a soul, and if it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for this blind sculptor, where would we be now? Because she was able to kind of talk him into turning on his master, and he never would have thought such a thing. Previously, I'm here to serve Galactus. I only serve Galactus, and she was able to turn him. And once again, Watu, I can't do this for you. I can't, but I could show you. Let me give you this map of Galactus's homeworld, and only the Human Torch can go there. And so he sends that the plan is, you guys, I'm going to send the Human Torch in through time and space to Galactus's homeworld, which, if anybody who read Secret Wars knows, um, and this is where the first time you saw it, is a giant space station. But in this issue, everything's a little bit smaller. But like anything else, like Galactus himself, the whole story of Galactus becomes bigger. So then his homeworld, right there, thank you, which by the way is called Ta 2, because
I
his
forgot
original
that.
homeworld was
Thank you.
Ta 1.
Tattoo.
Is now
Okay,
the
cool.
size of in Secret Wars. It's the size of a solar system, which you can't fathom something so big, at the time. But over here, it's just a big space station. And the Human Torch is sent on a mission to find the one weapon that Galactus fears and that can destroy Galactus and that can help the whole human race, of course. And of course, it's in Galactus's home. So they don't say what it is that he's looking for. They don't say that until issue 50, if I'm
Hmm.
not mistaken.
That's correct.
This MacGuffin that they go looking
Hmm.
for, which ends up being, of course, the ultimate nullifier, as we know. never been used, never been used
Never been used because
because yeah,
it could
yeah,
destroy an entire solar system,
that's
maybe the universe.
yes, exactly. So I love that Watu gets really involved here, and everybody is waiting. They're keeping Galactus at bay at the very least, and I also love in this issue. He basically says, "I'm not doing this because I want to. I have to do this because I have to. I have to
Have to
live.
feed. Hmm.
This I have to feed, and nothing can sate me except for the energies of an entire planet." Okay, the Bob's Big Boy is not going to do it for me. I need to destroy the oceans, and over here it's just the oceans, but in time we learn that it's actually the whole planet that
Right.
he destroys and turns into energy, and that's where we get the he's not a villain. He's not an anti-hero. He is just a cosmic force that needs to do just like everything else. Like the sun comes up and the moon goes and it goes down. It happens because it has to happen that way.
Hmm.
And that was the big difference with Galactus as opposed to all of the tyrannical villains we had seen already in the Fantastic Four. And we'd seen plenty of them,
Oh yeah.
whose motivations were power and a world domination, with Doctor Doom and destruction for whatever reason. He's like, nah, I'm just here to eat you guys because I have to,
Yeah.
and yeah, and one thing that Watu said was, all the other planets that you had were all dead planets, like as if this was the very first one where there was intelligent life. And we know, obviously they kind of retcon that and build his lore up more, that he'd eaten plenty of people, plenty of beings through the years, but making it sound like this is the very first one, and he had no problem doing that. So we end the issue with Johnny Storm in Galactus's home, and the Fantastic Four are just waiting for him to come back. And the Silver Surfer has made a decision at this point through Alicia Masters and about what he's going to do against his master, and then we go into
Hmm.
issue 50.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that like, cause again, I'm coming to all this so much later,
Hmm.
but like, you can just, there's no origin for Silver Surfer except what he does. Like the whole, like
Hmm.
the Norrin Rad's history is not talked about in this. Like that
No, no,
he
no.
sacrificed his life to
Hmm.
spare his own planet and become like,
Right.
but you don't need it. Like I'm always
No,
amazed
you
like
don't.
how
No.
much simple storytelling Stan and Jack could, or Stanley and Steve Ditko, but like they don't need all this. Like
No, no.
you got buy-in. Like we got
Yeah.
buy-in for the Silver Surfer right away.
Right. And what they gave us was more than enough to get us engaged in these fantastic characters. Now, a couple of years later, they come out with the Silver Surfer. The character was so well beloved in these three issues, that they gave him his own series. So they had to
Mhm.
now create a backstory for him, and a reason why he acts the way he does, and he doesn't remember the fact that he was a regular person, back in the day. But what they gave us was more than enough for us to eat up right away.
Yeah, they give you emotion, they give you pathos, they give you
Hmm.
danger, excitement. You don't need any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need the frills, because everything that's on the page is just driving the
Hmm.
narrative forward. And if you're a 10-year-old kid, your eyes are bugging out reading this, and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
I
This
mean,
is
And James, you say it all the time. What they did in 2 or 3 issues back then would have been a 2 year buildup, and to give us all this in 3 issues, and it was perfectly done in 3 issues. You can't do that today.
that's right.
I
Yeah.
thought just hit me. You said how we get Galactus and we don't get his backstory in his first appearance.
Hmm.
A few years later, over at the Distinguished Competition,
Hmm.
the aforementioned Jim Shooter creates, I think, the Legion's greatest enemy,
Hmm.
Mordru, and he appears in that story, and he's fully formed. We don't know where the hell he came from. But there's a little side note that the Legion had fought him before, which we find out later on, years later. But once again, it's like hit the ground running. This is the
Yeah.
villain. This is the situation. Let's go. These are comic books. This is action oriented entertainment done in this in sequential order. We don't need extraneous things.
It's almost like in the next generation of readers, the writers felt like, I don't know, maybe we weren't bright enough, that we couldn't hit the ground running with these characters and these stories, that we needed so much more build up and minutia to these characters before we would enjoy them. I don't understand. It was done perfectly 20 years later. Why do
Yeah.
we need a limited series before we get into the entire into the meat and potatoes of these characters and these stories? I don't understand it.
I mean, it could also
I
be
know why. It's the money. I get it. I
well,
get it.
there's that. I think. I mean, I have no idea if this is true or not, but I would imagine like the people who were growing up in these comics and then 20 years later get to write them. Maybe they were like, I want to know this character's backstory.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some of it could be like, you get like, I mean, somebody got the. I mean, we know now who, but somebody at Marvel was chosen to write Wolverine's origin. Like, and they were like, probably like, I got an idea. I've had an idea since I read Hulk 181 as a kid, and we're gonna do it. I mean, sure, part of it's money, and obviously all the extraneous like prelude issues and spin-off like tie-in comics is all money. But I'm sure some of it's like us, like we never got Silver Surfer's backstory, or like, oh, this character never had a backstory. Let's give it to
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the other thing I guess about backstories, which I don't want to go off on too much of a side tangent, was it what in Earth X that they made Galactus was eating rolls to stop the Celestials? Is that his like?
Yes.
That's when that lore came in, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
He wasn't just randomly eating worlds; he was culling
no.
the celestial population or
Yes,
something.
that's exactly what it was. And I mean, you know how much I loved Earth X, James, when I got into comics back again in the early 2000s, and when I first met you. I thought that was also a nice spin-off on that. And we know that Earth X is more of an Elseworlds kind of storyline, which I'm perfectly okay with. But I love how they tie Galactus into the Fantastic Four in that series as being Franklin Richards.
Yes.
So that's great.
Because the universe needed Galactus after he died.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and I forgot how. To be quite honest with you, I forgot how. But at that point, they needed a Galactus, and Franklin Richards had to take over.
Yeah.
Now, isn't Galactus, and I don't know if this is still in Marvel continuity, because continuity in both DC and Marvel is just it's whatever the whim. But isn't Galactus the last survivor of the previous universe?
Okay. Well, if you want to get into that, yes, it does. Real fast. Galactus is the last living being of the previous universe before the Big Bang. And it was one of the scientists that basically, like the Jor-El kind of storyline, where he knows that the planet is about to explode. He knows specifically that the universe is collapsing upon itself and leading to what would turn out to be the Big Bang. And he, for whatever reason, survived the Big Bang, and whatever energies was happening. So I can only imagine how many energies what kind of energy would be released during a Big Bang event. But he ended up surviving and then gestating in a cosmic egg of sort for however many millions of years until it opened up, and Galactus came out looking like he does now, although he looked far different back then in the previous incarnation, in the previous universe. And first thing he goes, I'm hungry. and here he is, and he was born, and he says it all the time, I was born with every other cosmic being, which was eternity and death, and they all came into being at the same exact time. And they all have their roles to play in the Marvel universe, cosmically anyway.
Wow. I mean, like, some of this, the lore that they add, when people like retcon or add in later, some of it's really good. I mean, some of the retcon, I like that story for Galactus' origin.
Originally, his original origin was that he was a space traveler that got too close to a sun. And then he was given those, and that was just literally just one story before they then retconned it, if I'm not mistaken. You read about his origins in the previous universe in the Thor issues that he was in the early 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. All right, Joe, you want to take us home? Issue 50?
Well, I mean, issue 50 is amazing because it's kind of like issue 48. It's it's actually three stories. I mean, we get Johnny gets back. He's got the ultimate nullifier. We finally see it. It's a little tiny thing. It looks like a cross between a squirt gun and a wrench.
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell it looks like,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
doesn't look like he could take out Galactus. But Reed literally stretches his arm and points it in Galactus's face, and all of a sudden this
yeah,
space god entity is like, you know what you're playing with?
yeah,
Puny Earth
yeah,
Man, Insect
yeah,
Man.
uh,
That thing could destroy the entire universe. Get that out
yeah,
of my face. And it's like, okay, uh, he comes to some type of Jesus moment, I guess, and he decides, all right, this is all not worth it. I'm not. This
yeah,
is just
yeah.
ridiculous.
I'm out.
I don't
I'm out.
need
I'm
this. I'm
out.
out. I'm out. I'm going to go. But here's the key, and I wrote this down. Hope I can find it. Let's see, probably on this page. Let's see. Oh, no, crap. Where the hell is it? Well, I can remember it. Before he goes, he's got to give a speech, and it's a good
Right.
one because
What's
he tells Reed, Sue, Johnny, Ben, the watcher, who's ever watching, listening. Obviously, all of Earth is watching via television and satellite. This can go either way for you guys,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been spared. Make the most of it
Right.
because you could go down the wrong path and destroy yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the 1960s. This is the height of the Cold War. And so,
Mm-hmm.
that message has to be there. It's not, and the great thing about it is they don't beat you over the head with it like they do today in
No,
comics.
it's
Give you
subtle.
a
It's
swirl on
subtle.
the nose. Like, that's a PSA. That's not a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge being who, for the first time, he says, for the first time, I'm standing down. I basically have been defeated, but I'm gonna still give these guys a piece of my mind
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the oldest friggin' thing in the universe. I should say something before I leave, and he does, and it's a very foreboding message. Whether he comes back or not, he's given his word. Watu tells Reed, give him the nullifier. If Galactus is anything, he is his word. You can take him at, he will never go, go back on his word. But, okay, so that ends. And then all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, what happened? Johnny is depleted. They bring him downstairs in the Baxter building. Ben overhears the Silver Surfer speaking to Alicia, and he misinterprets the conversation. She goes looking for him. The Silver Surfer takes off. Ben starts wandering the streets, thinking that his girl, his love of his life, is forsaking him. All of a sudden, Johnny's applying for college. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to fill in some stuff my own here. There should have been captions were a big thing in comic books at the time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
How about a
yeah,
caption 2 weeks later, and
yeah.
then we see
Okay.
Johnny at Metro College?
Yeah,
It seems like this all happened in a matter of days, which could not have been,
yeah.
because
No,
Johnny was
no.
completely washed out.
Yeah, yeah. He was wiped out. Yeah.
And then there's that mysterious bald guy who's reading the paper, the headline in the paper. I have the means to destroy the Fantastic Four, and that story, this man, this monster, issue 51.
Mm-hmm.
And James, you know this. I've said this on previous podcasts. That I think is the single best issue of any Marvel comic ever printed. That is an incredible story about the Thing and Ben Grimm and his journey. So that's set up in this thing too. And then Johnny goes to college and meets Wyatt Wingfoot,
Mm-hmm.
and he becomes very important, a very important character for like the next 10 years in the Fantastic
Yeah.
Four books.
Oh, longer than that, 20 years,
Yeah.
because
So
he dates Jennifer Walters, i.e.
I
the
forgot
She
that. Yeah,
Hulk,
thank you.
in the 1980s, while
So,
she's a member of the
forgot to write that
Fantastic
down.
Four, who took over for the Thing when he stayed on Battleworld after Secret Wars.
But you read this issue 50 and you get the feeling that Stan and Jack, all right, we told the story we wanted to. We want to set up what we're going to be doing for the next maybe half a year. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just put it down. Again, James, as you've alluded to a number of times, if this was happening today, I don't know how many issues this would have been. But these two guys, with the help of Joe Sinnott, were able to give you this cosmic story, this cosmic adventure come to Earth and still grounded in humanity. Mostly through, I think, Alicia, the Silver Surfer, and Ben Grimm.
Oh, we didn't even touch on the issue 50. Isn't that when the Surfer tries to fight back and then Galactus
Well,
eventually
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that's when he takes away his power, right?
Yes.
Or makes him.
No, hold on. He banishes him
Yeah, not to the right.
banishes him to Earth, to
Yes, that's
never
right.
be able to leave once
He still
again.
has the power
Okay,
cosmic, yeah, but he
still has the
can't
power,
break the
and
barrier.
he's still but he cannot get through. Okay, and real fast, I'm sorry to cut you off because
Okay.
he is. I believe there are stories where he's able to leave, but he in during the 60s or the 70s, but he is stuck on Earth. Okay, and this is how I got to know the Silver Surfer. In the mid 80s, they came out with, and in fact, 1986, they came out with a new Silver Surfer series 2,
Mm-hmm.
and Fantastic Four were in it, and the storyline goes, you know, okay, so they're trying to help him, get off the earth, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're Reed, big brain, and everything, and Ben Grimm is eating a sandwich there, and he goes, "You ever try to do it without your surfboard?" And he's like, "Nah, you guys are big brains, have been thinking about this forever. Of course you've thought about it." And they look at each other, they're like, "Oh my God, oh my God." so
I
so
forgot
what
all
do
this,
they
Arco.
do? So they put him on a spaceship without the surfboard, and they're like, "We're gonna put you on your own spaceship just in case you get ripped out of it because the force field. We don't want to die with you." Sure enough, he's able to go over the barrier, and he's now in outer space, and he's able to materialize his board from one side of the Earth to the other side now, and he's free. And at the end, he's like, "I'm free," and that's the last splash page. He goes into space, and he eventually meets Galactus, and Galactus ends up taking the curse away altogether, so he can come and go as he pleases. But that little thing that nobody thought about, that it wasn't him that was held here, it was his way of locomotion, and
Right.
that was his surfboard that was held here.
And
Wow.
that book ran for a very long time, right? That
That book,
volume two.
over 100 issues,
Yeah.
and that book was fantastic. And we're talking about the second series that started in 1986 because it was cosmic to the bone,
Yes. Oh
and,
yeah.
gave us lots of new characters of the elders, who there were only 4 or 5 at the time. Turned out there was like a dozen of them. They gave us the they gave us uh, the infinity gems, okay,
Right.
the soul stones, and then they
Hmm.
started fleshing out what they did, and then by issue 32, now they gave us Thanos back. Ron Lim took over in issue 16, 17, and then Starlin also came back, and those two guys gave us the Silver Surfer at his best, as far as I'm concerned, with the lead into the Infinity Gauntlet. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, so yeah, sorry, tangent,
No,
but yeah,
no, it's great.
No, no, no. I
it
mean,
all
it's great. I mean,
it all comes back to these 3 issues. Okay,
Yeah.
so
It's all in these 3 issues. Yeah,
mhm,
definitely. But issue 50 is amazing how it just moves along at breakneck speed, and
mhm,
then there's a break, and then okay, now there's some personal things going on that are laying the groundwork for future stories. One
mhm,
coming very, I mean, and then correct me if I'm wrong, Akko, we have 51, which is this man, this monster, and then
mhm.
52 is the introduction of the Black Panther, right?
You are not wrong. The
Wow,
Black
so I
Panther,
mean, 5 issues. Look what you get in 5 issues. It's
the Black
incredible.
Panther, and then his arch nemesis at the time, Ulysses Claw, who then
Well,
turns into um, the supersonic claw,
mm-hmm.
the being made out of sound because of the vibranium,
Of
and
sound, yep.
yeah, so these are characters, like I said, from the early 40s, issue 40s, through issue 60, 66, if I'm not mistaken. You have characters and storylines that are still felt today, 50, 60 years later.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, yes.
that's
Yeah.
incredible. I mean, these. I mean, like I said, these characters. I didn't know anything about them, but when I first started reading comics and I would encounter them, I knew they were cool. Like the Silver Surfer was like, it's a very cool design, and there
Very
was,
cool design.
and when it came out, Infinity Gauntlet, like there was nothing cooler at the time than the Silver Surfer. Like the Silver Surfer, like at some point hit like Wolverine status. I feel like he was.
He really did. That's a really good way of putting it. He was like the cosmic Wolverine in the '80s because everybody knew who the Silver Surfer was. Um, really fast. If you ever heard of the guitarist, world famous guitarist Joe Satriani, his first album was called flying with the surfer, and it had the Silver Surfer on it,
Mhm.
and side note, I know his brother. He's a member of the gym and
Oh,
looks exactly like him. So I said, if your brother ever wants to come to the gym, you let me know, because I'd love to let him use it and talk to him about guitars all day long. So yeah,
There you go.
that's it.
yeah.
So
Because
so
I
yeah,
knew, yeah,
he
he
was
was
very
like,
well known. Yeah.
he was well known. Yeah, that was, I mean, in that time period, like it was, yeah, Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock, and the Infinity Gauntlet series, like were like,
That was my
Wolf,
1989 to 1993. That was my time.
Wolverine was like,
Yeah,
who am I? Do I have,
yeah,
am I
yeah,
anybody at this
yeah,
time?
yeah. You guys remember me? Me. Yeah, so yeah. Hmm.
so, I knew, but now going back into the history of it, and I wish they would. I don't think they've, at least on Hoopla. I'm sure they have outside of it, but Hoopla, as we know with Marvel Epic collections, they don't collect them in order, and they don't.
No.
They put them out any rhyme or reason because they have parts of Volume 2 collected, but they don't have it from issue 1 collected
Okay.
of the Silver
Right.
Surfer. But I
Right.
have like saved a couple Epic Silver Surfer collections, but they're not
Hmm.
like in any order. But
I found a couple of years ago. I found both Marvel Masterworks Silver Surfers from a store in San Francisco and got a really good deal
that's from
on them.
Volume 1, right? Volume.
Right. Yeah.
There's two volumes, and the two
Yeah.
volumes of the Masterworks comprise the entire run of the first
Oh,
series,
okay.
which I think was 18 issues, Arco, something like that.
Yeah. It didn't last
Yeah.
that long, but it was impactful. It gave us his fleshed out story, which has remained the same this entire time. They never really had to retcon too much of that. And they gave us one of the characters, one of the most evil characters in
Ah,
Marvel
yes.
Universe, with Mephisto.
Yeah.
The literal devil of the Marvel Universe
Hmm.
came out in issue 3 of the first Civil Surfer series back in 1968, I believe it came out. So
And
issue 3, if I'm not mistaken, right around there, and we still have him to this day, and he's still considered a cosmic being himself.
Wow.
issue 4 is the Thor versus Silver Surfer issue
Yes, yes,
through
yeah.
the machinations of the Mephisto, and
Hmm.
it's penciled by John Buscema and inked by his brother
Hmm.
Sal. And
Yep.
I have to make these statements. I made it before about the single issue, This Man, This Monster. I think the most beautifully illustrated comic book I've ever read, ever seen, is Silver Surfer #4, the Buscema brothers. It's
Hmm.
absolutely
Well, the
gorgeous.
cover is amazing.
The cover's
Yes.
amazing. It's an iconic cover. It's one of the, probably one of the top 10 iconic covers in Marvel history. But you got to read the story. The story is great, but you will, James, you're an artist, you will drool over the artwork in this story. It's John Buscema's best effort ever. And I think
Hmm.
that's because his brother inked him.
Well,
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll have to read that next because I know Hoopla has the at least Masterworks Volume 1.
Read 3 because it kind of leads into you, obviously leads into it. So read 3 and 4 and you'll just enjoy the hell out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So something I want to tack on to the end of this episode because we actually have not discussed it on any episodes right now, and is let's talk about the Fantastic Four trailer because we've
Okay.
not
Yeah.
talked about it.
Okay. All right.
This is where all this is leading later
Yeah.
this year.
Okay.
We hope.
That's fine.
So I don't, Joe. It came out like actually I can't remember. I think the trailer actually dropped the day after we did the Giant Size X-Men issue. So
Yes, I
episode.
believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
So we haven't gotten a chance to talk to it, and you and Keith didn't talk about it, Joe. So let's talk about it. What were your guys' thoughts about what you saw in the trailer?
Oh, I like most of what I saw. I like the whole retro future look to it. Takes place on obviously in another world in the '60s. I
Hmm.
like the spaceship. It looked like a spaceship at that time would look like. Um, I don't know where I know Keith and I did talk about this, but I think it was through text. The one thing that I was disappointed with the entire and I guess it's nitpicking the Thing's voice. It just didn't sound like a guy from the Lower East Side, and I'm hoping they don't change that. I hope they don't give him a different point of origin growing up. I just think Ben Grimm has to be the Jewish American guy that grew up on the Lower East Side and on Yancey Street,
Yancey
and
Street. Thank you.
he's got that
Yeah.
thick New York accent. So I'm hoping that that's going to come through somehow in the film.
Okay.
But otherwise, I enjoyed
Um,
it. Yeah.
I love, James, that you and I are texting early that morning, and you send me that link. You send me that link, and Sharif that link also. And of course, it was a fan-made trailer as we're looking at it. Or was it Sharif that sent it? I
Sharif
apologize. It
sent that.
wasn't your.
Sharif.
I apologize. Okay,
No,
so
it's fine.
Sharif sent it, and and it's a fan-made trailer, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, something's wrong here. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
we gotta
go,
watch those
I
animated
go,
trailers.
something's wrong, and we got kind of like duped on that one. So it was a deep fake, and then about 5 minutes later, we got the real one. Um, I think it looks exactly like we were told it was going to look. It was going to have the 1960s futuristic aesthetic
Mhm.
to it. Um, and I believe that they gave away a lot of what this movie is going to be without giving away the story. But I personally believe, if we haven't talked about it, I think that it's going to be sort of like a documentary of the Fantastic Four and leading into what happened with them in Galactus. And at the end, they're gonna what hap they're gonna something's gonna happen, and they're gonna pop into Earth 616, which is
Mhm.
the MCU as we know it today. Um, really fast, I loved how everybody looked, and I'm all for Galactus the way he looks. I love that he's gonna have a little ridiculous hat
He's a
on and everything.
person this time and not
Yeah,
a
yeah,
cloud.
Yeah,
That
not a
is fun.
cloud. That is so dumb.
which goes a long way. But I will say I find it very telling that they did not show the Mr. Fantastic's powers because, as I've said, and I will always say, I don't care who does it. I don't think that that is a power that translates well onto the screen. I don't think they've done it well. I don't know if they can do it well. I would be surprised if it happens. They show us something that we just don't think is going to look overly silly, and no matter what CGI we have.
It's
So
very difficult to do and make it look
yes,
not
yes.
silly. I agree. I
Uh, I,
mean,
I I mean, it's a silly power to begin with, to
it
be able
is.
to stretch. Okay, I mean, this is why Plastic Man is a silly character, even though he's apparently the most powerful character in all of DC, if I'm not mistaken, because
Well,
of
that can be
his
debatable.
particular his power set. But Batman says he doesn't know how powerful he is. If he
Yeah.
knew how powerful he was, but whatever.
You
Um,
have
yeah,
Ralph Dibny, the elongated man.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
You have
It just
yeah,
it's a power that does not lend
Jimmy
well
Olsen,
to
Elastic Lad.
good CGI on the screen. So I'm curious how it's to look, but otherwise, I'm all for it. Yeah.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see this program, James. I know you did, and maybe you did, Arco. But didn't they change uh, Kamala Khan's power from the comic book to the TV show? Because
Yeah, well, they
she
she's
didn't have the big hands and stuff, right? She wasn't embiggened in the TV
she
show,
could she could create energy constructs that look like she was
right?
embiggened.
So, but it
Yes,
wasn't
Okay.
organic.
it wasn't organic,
Okay. So, all
Okay.
but
right.
they also changed her so she'd be a mutant. So
Well, yeah. Well, that's a story for another
Wow.
day. But
For
yeah.
about 5 seconds, and they
yeah,
haven't pulled that back, said to anything yet. But so we don't know where that's going. But yeah,
So maybe they're going to do something with Reed stretching powers that's going to be different than
maybe
we've known for the past 60 plus years,
that's
64
fine.
years.
I
Yeah,
mean, I
that's
was
fine.
listening to some opinions online in which you this is all speculation now, audience. We know nothing. I know nothing. I'm just talking about what other people who saw the trailer are talking about the same thing we do. But I thought they were interesting things. I forget what I was listening to, but someone came up with the idea that we didn't see Reed stretch because Reed didn't get his powers in the first run. Like he doesn't have any when in the beginning of the movie because they talk about a second space flight
That's
that
right. That's a good point. That's right.
because they talk about doing a second space flight, and some people speculate
hmm
they're doing the second flight to go back up there so Reed would get powers this time.
Oh, oh,
Okay.
oh, okay.
The
That's
other the
something.
other thing is like maybe they come to our Earth because in their world they can't defeat Galactus and their world is destroyed, and they very
Um,
Superman like
yeah,
make their way over here.
I've read that the ending is going to have that particular story arc to it, where their world ends and they pop into ours, and that's how they come into 616.
Yeah.
Now,
So
but are they giving up at the end of the movie, or I mean, are they
Uh,
running away?
that I
I
don't
hope
know. I
not.
mean, that I don't know. And I'm
That's not
not
very
saying,
heroic.
yeah, I'm not saying that we're going to see the end of the world right there, but for
Uh,
whatever,
maybe Reed is coming to another dimension to find help to go back
maybe.
and save his
maybe
world.
yeah.
That
I
sounds
did
more to
hear
me.
the Council of Reeds is maybe something that is in this. Apparently, there is a
Mhm.
such a thing like the
Never
Council
been a
of
fan of
10.
that.
Yeah, I've me neither.
I
I
like that
only
run.
only
I
know.
like Hickman's run on FF actually. I like that whole thing he did there.
Yeah.
We're gonna maybe we'll see Jeffrey Wright as a live action Uatu at this point since he's been doing it. What if?
Sure.
We've-
Why
Oh,
they've
not?
okay.
introduced You know, they.
I would like to see the Watcher.
I can't imagine they didn't show him, but I can't imagine they not have Uatu show up at some point in this movie. Like,
I thought that was guaranteed. I'm
Did,
sorry. I thought I
did
heard
we
that.
see Alicia in this trailer? Was she?
I
I don't
know
think
we
so,
did
right?
not see it, but we
yeah,
did see Herbie.
Yes, we
yeah,
did see Herbie. Yeah, I hope he gets stomped on by the end of the
Yeah,
film.
yeah,
Can't
yeah,
stand Herbie. What a stupid.
yeah.
You know why Herbie was in the cartoon,
Yes,
right? They were,
Yes, for those of us who don't
go ahead,
know, in
Arco.
the cartoon, the Herbie was in the cartoon in the 70s because they were afraid that the Human Torch would lend to um, uh, little kids lighting themselves on fire and
Emulating themselves with.
to emulating themselves to emulate their hero on this. So they
Yes,
needed something a little bit more family friendly and
tame
less
friendly.
firing. So they came up with Herbie. Yeah,
Herbie.
yeah.
Herbie winds up. He reappears in the John Byrne run, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? Wasn't he in the run for a
Oh,
while?
Willie Lumpkin does, but I don't know about Herbie to be quite
I'm
honest
gonna
with you.
check. I think he
Yeah,
might have
you're going to have to
popped up
check
there.
that.
Okay.
So,
well,
I'm sure Byrne wanted to get rid of him. He probably does.
mm.
yeah. Well, I thought the trailer was good overall. I mean, I liked the way the Thing looked over.
Yeah, he did look
No,
good. I didn't
it's
like the way he
fun.
sounded,
Yeah,
but
it
he
looked
looked
fun.
good.
Yeah,
you
it
know,
looked
he
fun.
looked. I mean, I also was still a fan of Chickless's Thing. I
I was
mean,
gonna say Chickless's thing was actually very spot on. Okay,
Yeah,
so I mean, yes, it didn't look so much like a rubber suit to me. It looked like the thing should look like, especially early
yes,
Fantastic
Arco.
Four,
Early thing, who wasn't
where he wasn't
that
the
huge.
bricks, yes, and he
Hmm.
wasn't the bricks. He was kind of lumpy and
Yes,
almost looking softish in some
looked
spots.
like a
So.
giant oatmeal monster.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that
Yeah.
Fantastic Four thing in the Fox thing basically from 2004 and 2007 movies was very well done, in my opinion. So
And
yeah.
Michael Chiklis is an excellent actor.
yeah, great actor,
He pulled
I
off
mean,
absolutely.
the
well.
worst part of those movies, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, was Doctor Doom. They
Yeah,
couldn't get they
yeah.
didn't get him right. I thought they
Twice
actually had a
they didn't get him right. You
yeah,
know.
I thought they actually had a great actor, Julian McMahon. I thought could play it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But the
absolutely.
backstory and everything,
It didn't work. No.
it
No,
didn't
Now,
work.
have
no.
you guys seen the Roger Corman Fantastic Four?
Yes, I have seen
Yeah,
it,
yes,
and
I've seen that.
I understand why they did it. And you know what? God bless them because
They tried.
the woman who played Sue Storm, if you know this story, it was the woman who actually came up with the costumes herself for
Really?
the movie.
I
Yes,
didn't know that.
she
Okay.
created them for the movie. Okay, but let me tell you something. As far as how they looked,
They
they were
look comic
all
book accurate.
they were comic book accurate and the most comic book accurate Doctor Doom
Oh,
that
definitely. I
we've
was
ever
about to get to that. Thank
okay,
you.
yeah, absolutely. And but the Human Torch was a literal cartoon, but that's CGI back in
See,
1994. What are you
yeah,
going
it
to do?
was
So
nascent
that movie,
CGI, right? Yeah.
yeah, that movie was not meant to be
And
seen
Reed's
as
arm was obviously a glove on a stick.
that's so. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the beginning of the end when
Yeah.
with me because you can never have that
Yeah.
look good back in 1994. So.
Yeah, but
Mm.
yeah, I mean, some parts of that were good. I mean, like I said, the Fox movies, if you take certain parts of it out, not bad. I mean, the Silver
Yeah.
Surfer looked
Okay.
great in the second one too.
Yeah.
I thought he
I
looked.
love the Fantastic Car.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
Dodge.
Yeah. It was a Dodge. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love the
Um.
Fantastic Car in that movie.
yeah,
I hope we're going to see the Fantastic Car in this movie. Well, we did
Yeah.
see a
We
very
did. We
futuristic
did
car.
see it. We
Yeah,
did. We did see it.
had the
Yeah.
little car,
Something
I guess.
similar.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay.
Real
Check
fast,
the
if we
slide
could
out.
just go back to when talking about Galactus leaving
Sure.
and giving his word. Apparently, his word didn't mean much of anything because he came back 3 more times, and Galactus was defeated 4 times before he decided that he would never and made the now since this was 1982, 1983 when this happened, when he lost and decided to never. Go again, swore an oath never to come against the earth once again. And but what happened in that storyline was that he got himself a new herald there in Frankie Ray, who at the time was Johnny Storm's girlfriend, who had the same similar powers as him. So that's why they were together, and it was
Mhm.
heartbreaking at the end when she just decided that she was always meant to be something more than basically a superhero on Earth, and she felt like she had a calling someplace else in the universe. And Galactus saw that also and imbued her with the power cosmic, made her his most favorite and faithful herald, and Nova, and she takes off, and Penny getting something in there for dinner there, and so but and at the end, before Galactus takes off in his little Nimbus cloud like he normally does, he goes, perhaps Galactus has finally found those he can call friends. I'm calling you friend now because you beat me 4 times already, so I
Yeah.
might as well. If you can't beat
He's a
me,
practical. He's a practical being at some
yes,
point.
practical
Yes.
being, yes, absolutely.
Arco,
So,
okay. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Finish,
No,
but
no, that
no, I
was
was
it.
going to
I
ask you
was
if you
just wanted to say.
could please enlighten us with naming all the heralds of Galactus. So I'm sure I
Oh,
know them
well,
all.
I could give you up until Nova, most likely. So
Okay.
Silver Surfer. Now, of course, there are retcons that there were those before the Silver Surfer. Okay, but we're gonna go with Silver Surfer first, and then we're gonna go with Airwalker.
I forgot
And
Airwalker.
then
Yeah.
then we're gonna go with Fire Lord.
I remember Fire Lord.
Then Terex the Tamer.
I love Terex. Really did
And
like
and
Terex.
then and then if I'm not mistaken, then we go into Nova, who was like the longest lasting one up until then the 90s. Then there was a few others that you see, but those were the main ones, if I'm not mistaken. If I miss one, I'd be surprised, to be quite honest with you. I think I gave you all 5 of them
I forgot
from.
Airwalker entirely.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Airwalker was there for a cup of coffee, and
Yeah.
then
Basically. Yeah. A
and
cup of cosmic
Airwalker,
coffee.
yes, and Airwalker was also, he was killed, but he was a very good friend of Firelord. So then Firelord kind of like
I remember
imbued
that.
the essence of Airwalker into a cyborg. So there was a robot Airwalker going around for a little while, also. But those were the Heralds of Galactus through about 1996.
Oh, and thank you, Arco. And there's one thing I wanted to mention about, I guess, was when Ben destroys partially the machines on top of the Baxter
Like,
building.
like,
Galactus decides, well, I gotta rebuild all my stuff, so I'll
yeah.
just got to keep them busy. So he sends down the Punisher,
The Punisher, yes, the Punisher.
separated at birth, the Destroyer and the Punisher.
Yeah, Punisher
Little version,
robot. In fact,
yeah, a little mini
it's funny
version of
that
the
you said that,
Destroyer.
because I remember reading that story back in the 80s, and they had the Punisher, and I'm like, I mean, couldn't, but okay. I mean, you had the Punisher, you had the Cosmic Punisher, and then you have a street level Punisher,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
of course later on in the 2010s, you had the Cosmic Punisher, who was the street level Punisher. So yeah, I guess you
Let's
can
not waste a
recycle
good name if
ideas. No,
That's right.
absolutely.
Dan's like, let's repurpose this.
It's gone. I made you the last one to. Yeah,
No,
repurpose as we go.
yeah. I think I think you read. I lent it to you. I think the thing I liked best, not the. I mean, it's not. It's a great. It's. I think a great way to do it is when at the end of it, in part of an Annihilation storyline, which took however long, a year-long
Oh,
story arc,
oh my God.
they banish Galactus into the Ultimate Universe, and then he merges with the Ultimate Galactus, and then I relate you that trade, Arco, the Cataclysm, and which was the
I don't think I've ever read that.
616 Galactus merged with his Ultimate counterpart, and he just starts annihilating the
So
Ultimate Universe.
I think I remember something of that. To be quite honest with you, James, I'm sorry. That was like towards the tail end of my comic book collecting. So I apologize if I don't remember that offhand. What I do remember the most, though, is that in 2013, I remember reading about a storyline called the Age of Ultron. Okay, which not
Hmm.
the same, but the Age of Ultron. At the end of the Age of Ultron, which had time travel shenanigans, as most best comic stories do, there is something that happens. Apparently, the Age of Ultron, the ending, was leading into something called Secret Wars that would happen a few years later, and it was just the beginning of it. But it was telling us that we have the comics, the heroes have broken time so many times through the last 20, 30 years that basically the multiverse is broken, and now you're having the convergences happening, which we see
Right.
in the Marvel universe, but it's happening on the page, and that is what leads to that's what leads to Secret Wars. And you have 616 Galactus showing up, I believe, in the Ultimate Universe, right there.
Yeah.
You have a character like Spawn's Angela showing up in the 616 universe. Okay, and that was mind blowing. okay, and because they finally figured out who she belonged to, so they said, so said, Marvel, that she's yours, and they made her Thor's sister. That's how they did that. So. Um, Going back to it, Galactus has been in the middle of all of these fantastic stories since 1966, and they use him not just as a MacGuffin, but as a driving plot point in many stories
Oh
throughout the
yeah.
last since the beginning, so almost 60 years ago.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was good. I mean, I know it's a little weird, and the stories are, but I enjoyed that, like, old 616 Galactus in the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
That was a
Okay.
good trade. I think it's on Hoopla, but I
Okay.
just
I'm
remember,
out.
like,
Check that out.
because in the Ultimate Universe they decided to also go with the Cloud like Galactus, and I
Yes.
remember, like, when he
I
arrives.
was not happy about that, bro.
No,
Let me tell you something. They built that up. Ultimate extinction, ultimate this, ultimate that. I was not happy. It was an insect cloud, okay?
Insect Cloud.
And
Yeah,
Really?
I
See, I didn't
was
read that.
and it
I didn't read it.
lasted for over a year and a half. So,
it
I
was a
mean,
long story.
that's the kind of stuff that really upset me enough to the point that, you got me now. You got me. It's a minimum of 295 a book, okay? And I don't mind series. I don't mind limited series, but it was three limited series, 6 issues each. 18 issues altogether before you got to the end of this, and they mixed in everybody. They had the X-Men, Ultimate Avengers, the Ultimates, everybody, and the payoff was nothing,
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. It was terrible. It was really bad. Thank you for
yeah.
reminding me
No,
that.
no, I'm sorry. Well, I
Hey,
mean, like I said, to come out of it, I enjoyed the Cataclysm, because, like, when Galactus
Mhm.
shows up, I know in the Ultimate Universe, they sent, like, the Cloud. Galactus goes after him, and 2 seconds
Yeah,
later, Galactus
yeah,
is like, "No, you absorbed into me,"
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and then,
yeah,
but it was a good series. Of that,
that
the
that
disappointing the Galactus thing, the Cataclysm series was
yeah,
really
so
yeah.
that's when was I almost said catechism. When was catechism? Catechism.
Cataclysm was
I can't
right,
even say
like
it.
Argo said, right on the when they were building for Secret Wars 2, basically.
'Cause DC
Okay.
did that years before when Gotham had
Yeah,
the earthquake, and then it became no man's land.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Cataclysm was Galactus was in the 616 universe. I mean, the Ultimate Universe, basically destroying Earth.
Mhm.
I think Captain America died trying to save the world from Galactus, and then
You know, But what I don't understand is that the Ultimate Universe at that point was already basically over because Ultimates 3 pretty much finished everything, and you had the Ultimate Wave and everything destroyed Magneto, killed everybody, and I thought that everything was done there, and then they kind of like merged everything together. Miles Morales comes over.
Hmm.
Anyway, that by that time I was out, so
yeah,
you
That's when
just
I got out.
hear,
Before,
so.
actually,
But
before that, yeah.
real fast, James, to your point, as you can see, the original is always going to be best.
Hmm.
We always try as comic book fans and creators, they try and redo the characters that have stood the test of time, and they normally and usually fail miserably at it. And I don't understand why. I mean, I know it's for the money, but at some point you really have to stop trying to reinvent the wheel and just leave things as it is.
Yeah,
yeah.
create new characters, new
Mhm.
storylines,
Exactly.
and in new worlds
Mhm.
and whatnot. Yeah,
Yeah,
I completely
exactly.
agree. Yeah.
So,
Well, Argo, I think I put a button on the episode. That's a good way,
hey,
Yeah.
thanks.
good place to check out. So,
Okay.
well, listening audience, I hope you've enjoyed this walk down memory lane, or the doing a recap of Fantastic Four issues 48, 49, and 50, The Coming of Galactus. I, of course, could not have done this episode without my two other Marvel expert hosts. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, James. I just wanted to say one thing before we cut. This story, The Coming of Galactus, when I think of great Marvel stories, this is among, I think of Amazing Spider-Man 39 and 40, Green Goblin learning Peter's identity and what happens there. I also think of Giant Size X-Men #1 as a seminal story, the
Hmm.
death of Gwen Stacy, and my favorite Marvel story of all time,
Hmm.
Daredevil Born Again. But this story, as we've said, it's iconic. It's seminal. It is basically the foundation of the Marvel universe to the nth
Hmm.
degree, and it's You know, folks, if you haven't read it, go out there and read it and James will tell you where you can find it. But
It's on
just,
Hoopla. You can get it on Hoopla. The Fantastic Four Masterworks is there. And audience, Joe mentioned all those comic books, and we've done an episode on every one of those books and every one of those stories. Yes, every one of those we have done an episode on.
That's right. We did do Death of Gwen Stacy, and of course we did. Yeah, we did Giant Size X-Men recently, right?
Yes, we did an episode on each and every one of those. So you can go back if this is your first time listening and listen to all of those episodes and get caught up. And
an unintentional plug. Look at that. I had no idea I was doing that.
Right.
And of course, I could not have done this episode without my other Marvel expert, our Marvel Cosmic episode. Arco, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. We've been looking forward to this one. We've been threatening to do this for like over a year now, and I'm glad you were able to do it. I had a great time doing it, and I enjoy talking about this stuff like you wouldn't believe. Thank you very much.
I feel like I don't know if we'll get to it. Well, you know, at some point, Arco, I know we have X-Men books we're behind the scenes working on, but I think we got to do the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh yeah! Please.
Oh, definitely.
I'm all over that. I mean, you know, talk about something that I have memorized. I will lead.
Oh, good.
Into,
I haven't read it in years, so I definitely want to do it.
Well, I mean, you can't do the Infinity Gauntlet without starting. You know,
with the Return of Thanos, or the
Return of Thanos, but even what the gems were in the Marvel Universe before, and so you know, say hello. Let me get to it, and then and then see me at the end of the hour, okay?
We'll sit quietly in the corner, James and I, and you just take it away, man.
No, that's fine. I'd be happy to do that. I've been looking forward to it, so let me know.
Yes, and then listening audience, we will be returning probably soon. We're going to also do Secret Wars Part 2 with Arco. I know if you were in suspense, wondering what do we have to say about the next 6 issues, we're going to get to that very soon. So
lots to say. Yeah.
Lots to say. So. But if you've enjoyed this episode, we always like to hear from you. So if you're listening to this on iTunes, you can leave a review. That's what you can do on iTunes. If you choose to go over to Spotify, you can leave comments there. Some form of this episode should be on YouTube if you're listening to us there. So there's comments there, and we have the Facebook page. Obviously, you can always drop in there. So we'd love to hear from you. Like Joe said, please go out and read these books. They're the foundation of the Marvel Universe. You get them on Hoopla. You can get them in Epic Collections, and if you have enough money, I guess you could buy the originals. But,
God bless you.
It's pretty expensive.
But as always, we thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.